Hi guys, hope you guys are all doing well. My goodness, I have had a wild few days with my cars and bookings. Don't mind my little headset. I am testing out a setup for a podcast, which will be hopefully live soon, just waiting for my distribution to get approved. And with that podcast, actually what I'll be doing is sort of like a weekly Turo roundup. So I'll begin by doing that. So everything kind of that you find on YouTube plus some in one podcast per week. So you kind of get a summary of everything that went on for that week. But let's jump into the last couple of days I've had. So in April, we experienced a huge dip in business. I personally was down about 60%, and I know a lot of other people were too. And coming into May, at least in my area, things have really gotten back to somewhat of a normal state of business. I've been incredibly busy the first couple weeks of May so far. My sales are right around normal right now. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the month goes. But I think what's happened is, even though I personally think that I'm a very sort of regimented person and I can fare well in tough situations, I think this pandemic has even affected me. It's kind of like thrown me off my game a little bit is what I feel like, probably because April was just so slow. So my routine really changed up in April, and now coming into May, it was like boom, we were back in business. Mother's Day was so busy. This past weekend was so busy. All the cars were booked out solid. If you follow my Instagram at Saimah's Experience, I do post every weekend what bookings I had for the weekend with all of my cars. So it just got instantly busy coming into May, which of course with busyness comes dealing with multiple renters and issues that arise, which is normal. And for whatever reason, I sort of had a snowstorm of issues arise this weekend, and they were just back to back to back. And I don't know why it has to happen like that, why it has to come in sets. But literally, this is how it happens every time. So I'll start off with kind of where it all began. So Friday, I had a car come back. Was with a renter for quite some time. Car came back, everything was fine, picked it up on time, everything went well. There was a scratch that was about yay big on the rear bumper right side. It wasn't a big deal. In fact, it wasn't even that noticeable, but it was there, so I got the claim filed. Talked to the renter about it. Renter seemed fine with me filing the claim. Filed the claim. Actually already heard back from Turo today that the claim is being processed with the resolve a claim. So no biggie, right? Happens, that'll get cleaned up, not a big deal. Well, that same car went out on a rental maybe 4 to 5 hours later, I think it was. And in between that time, I drove that car a bunch, went to go run a bunch of errands, took it to the car wash, everything was fine. That car was also serviced probably about 2 weeks prior to this weekend. So it's been freshly serviced, everything's running well. It's not like a super high mileage car, it's a car that I had bought new. So anywho, goes on its next rental, everything's fine. A day later, I get a message from the renter who has that car saying, hey, I get all these messages, right? And all these photos. And first picture is, hey, earlier I had noticed that there was a low oil notification that came on. It's late, guys, so bear with me as I tell you this story. Low oil, right? Which of course is never a good thing. You want to make sure you have enough oil in it, which also was kind of strange because I just had the car serviced 2 weeks prior, got an oil change done. And then the guy proceeded to tell me, I pulled over and noticed all this oil leaking out of the car. Literally a huge puddle this big of oil leaking out of the car. Not good. Blaring signs that this is not good and you probably shouldn't drive. Well, from the photos that the guy sent me, it seems like he proceeded to drive the car despite seeing all of these issues occur. Then I get a photo that the car is stuck literally in the middle of the road somewhere in LA, and that the car is just dead. He can't start it, can't pull off to the side of the road. It's just stuck in the middle of the street, and from the picture, it looks like a busy street. There's tons of cars around. So I'm like, oh goodness, okay. So when he's texting me all of this, I am actually en route to one of my guests who rented my Polaris, I get a call from him saying, hey, we parked the car, went for a little walk. They were, thank goodness, in just a neighboring city right next door. Came back to the car's not starting, and it's giving a clicking noise. And of course, clicking noise is usually notorious for a battery. But then again, the weird thing was that I just replaced this battery about a week ago. So it's like, what the heck? That is so strange. This is a brand new battery in the Polaris. Like, why would it be doing that? So the guest was super nice who rented my Polaris, and he seemed very mechanically inclined as well. He tried to start it a bunch of times. He even offered to call his own AAA and see if they could come out and jump it or just whatever needed to be done. And I was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. You're close by. Let me come out to you with my jumper cables and let's take a look at what's going on. Because in the Polaris, the battery is in the rear panel and it's kind of hidden, and you have to pull that compartment off, and it's not just an easy plug and play. So usually what I've experienced in the past is that AAA won't deal with cars like this. So anywho, I went to the guy. Funny enough, I get there and the car starts right back up. No problems, no clicking, and the guest felt horrible that I came out there, and he was like, I swear I tried it so many times. I don't know what happened. I was like, hey, look, things happen. I wouldn't be surprised if something weird happened. These cars are quirky, so it's fine. So the guy had the car for another 2 days. They even went to Big Bear and everything was fine. No issues after that. So not really too sure what happened there. I am going to get it checked out just for good measure. And so while I'm diagnosing the guy with the Polaris, I have this other guy telling me that my car is stuck in the middle of the road in Los Angeles. I'm like, oh goodness. And this guest is not happy at all. I mean, he is angry. So I'm being as nice as I possibly can be, but also keeping in the back of my mind, like, hey, first, you said that you noticed low oil like a while ago, and then you send me a picture where you're pulled off somewhere on the side of the road, it seems like, because you can see the sidewalk where there's a giant pile of oil. And then you send me a final photo showing that the car is stuck in the middle of the street, which tells me that you proceeded to drive before contacting me. So much going on. So in this case, what I did was, because the car was in LA, this guest was already super frustrated from his messaging. I like to keep AAA. It's something that I keep all the time because it comes in handy. And Turo's roadside assistance oftentimes takes a really long time. And not only, I was concerned for the guest for sure, but he was already out of the car and in a safe place and left the car in the middle of the street. I was also very concerned for my car because if a cop comes around or a CHP comes around, they could definitely get that car towed, and then it's a whole other ordeal that you have to deal with if that happens, because especially when it's stuck in the middle of the street for an extended period of time, they don't like that and they can have it towed. And I've experienced that in the past and I didn't want that to happen. So rather than going through Turo's roadside assistance and having to wait a couple of hours, and I wasn't going to drive all the way to LA to go figure out what was happening with that car, I called my AAA, and literally within 10 minutes, my AAA tow truck was there. They grabbed the car and I had them bring it over to the dealership here close to my house. So not exactly sure at this point in time what happened with that car. But what I do feel confident is in the fact that I do have service records literally from 2 weeks prior that the car just went in for maintenance. And obviously at the time of pickup, everything was fine. The guy had it for a day or two before he complained about anything. And then again, everything is in messaging with photo documentation of what happened. So in this scenario, what I did was I filed a claim with Turo, but I left it as resolved with guests because I don't exactly know what's going on with the car. It's at the dealership right now. So I do just want to make sure of exactly what happened before I proceed with the claim. Now, when you do file a claim and you leave it as resolve it directly with the guest, you have 10 days from the time of filing to switch your decision and say, hey, no, Turo, I want you to take this over. So I'm going to wait and see what happens. I should know by tomorrow what happened with that car before I proceed and figure out what action I need to take. But I'm very confident in that I have everything documented. I have service records, so I know, the condition of the car before I gave it to the renter. So that was that story, which I guess is still pending because we'll find out what happens over the next couple of days. Then today, so this is yesterday, or I'm sorry, this was Saturday. No, today's Monday. You guys, I'm losing it. So this was on Sunday. Today is Monday. Today, I get a message from one of my renters like, oh no, got a flat tire, took it to Firestone, and they're saying that there's metal showing throughout the wheel and that it's not drivable. Again, a local renter literally next city over. And I was like, wait, what? Metal showing on the tires? That can't be. I checked the tires before and after every rental, right? So, and I already had kind of a lot going on with these other trips. So in this scenario, I don't usually always do this, right? And I would consider myself an extreme case because I do Turo full time and I do rent to a lot of people who are local. I'm able to go and troubleshoot them in small scenarios, right? So kind of like the battery, like, yeah, I can go and jump it and kind of get you on with your day faster than calling roadside assistance or getting support, especially if I'm available. Now, of course, if I'm not available, then we'll use some other options. But if you're nearby and available, I will try to come and help because this is what I do full time. And I know obviously that is not what most people would do, but again, I'm an extreme case and I can only share with you what my experience is. So this renter tells me whatever that this has happened with the wheel, and I was like, okay, you know what, I will be there, let me come check it out. And there's no other option if the metal is showing than to replace that tire. So I quickly run over to my tire shop, which is also why it's so important to have a good connection with your service providers so that you can move very quickly. Went over to my tire shop, picked up a tire because I saw where the car was located was actually right across a tire shop. And if the car was not drivable, then, I don't want to have to figure out how to get it to my tire shop and get a tire on and take it back. So instead what I did was I grabbed a tire from my tire shop, took it with me to the location of the car, and I figured we could probably get enough air in it to get it to the tire shop that was across the street from where the car was located and just have them swap out the tires. So I get there, I'm looking at the car. Of course, first thing I do is look for metal, right? And as I'm looking at the tires, I'm like, what the heck? These tires are brand new. And then I realized, duh, this car does have brand new rims and tires because this is my white C300 where the rims and wheels got jacked about a month and a half ago at my renter's complex. So I had just put on a full new set of tires and wheels. So I was like, how could there be metal? There's no way. So I'm inspecting all the tires, no metal anywhere, right? And at the time that I went there, the guest was not there, conveniently, right? So I'm like looking at the tire and it's totally flat. You can see the car like sitting on the rim, which is so bad. And so I noticed like on the front bumper, so it was a front left tire. So I'm looking at the front left side of the bumper and it totally looks like they hit something. Probably looked like a big maybe tire piece on the freeway because you can see where it's all sort of, there's not curb rash, but that's what it looks like, all beneath the bumper, exactly in the line of the tire, and the bumper was just slightly misaligned, so you can tell that they for sure hit something, right? And you can see it obviously, and that damage wasn't there before. So it's like, okay, so what happened here is that they hit something and it punctured the tire, and what happened was the tire wouldn't even hold any air. So I took my air compressor, put air in it, didn't hold anything, and you can actually hear the air leaking. And so it was actually slashed on the inside wall. There was a pretty big gash that obviously you cannot repair. That tire just has to be replaced. So I messaged the renter. I was like, hey, you know what, I inspected the tire and there's no metal showing anywhere. In fact, it's like a brand new tire, and it looks like, maybe something was hit while you were driving because there's a little bit of damage on the bumper right where the tire has a gash. And so the renter just responded like, oh my gosh, sorry, I looked at the photos again when we took it to Firestone, and it must have been the glare of the light because, yeah, you're right, I don't think I see any metal. I think the lighting was what I thought the metal was. I was like, okay, all right, renter, we'll go along with that story for now. And of course, I'm documenting everything, right? So anyways, I went, got the car, put air in the tire, got it just enough to get it to the tire shop across the street, got the tire changed out, left it with the renter. Now, some of you might be wondering why I just left the car with the renter. I could have ended the reservation early, shouldn't have somebody like that driving your car. But here's what I figured. I figured that Look, the renter only has a day or two left on the car. I documented everything. There's clearly a little bit of damage to the front bumper. I rather them finish out their reservation so I can get my full earnings. And then on top of that, I've already repaired the tire, so when I go and file the claim for these damages, my car doesn't get unlisted. So that's the main thing that I wanted to avoid, was having an unlisting of the car, because if it gets unlisted, it's a whole thing to get it relisted again, and I don't want to lose days in the relisting process, as we know I just went through with my 2 Series. So that was my thought process behind that. So that's what I did. That was the decision that I made. I think I'm okay with it. We'll see in 2 days when the car comes back, but I think everything should be fine. So it's been just kind of a whole mixture of things going on. And then finally, to top it all off, I have a car that's being returned today, right? Came back earlier. This renter has about 20 previous trips on the platform, all 5-star ratings, right? No issues. Everything was fine. Good communication, picked up the car on time, he brought it back on time, full tank of gas, blah, blah, blah. But prior, a couple of hours before his drop-off time, I get a message from him saying, hey, it's raining, and I wanted to extend the reservation for about an hour or so because I don't feel safe driving in the car because the front tires are pretty bald. And I saw this message and it's just like, wait, what? I know those tires aren't bald. What are you talking about, dude? And so I was like, oh, whatever. Like, if you want to extend, just go ahead, go through the process, submit your extension, I'll approve it. It's an hour. What do I care, So he submitted his extension and he was like super thankful, almost as if he said that to make sure that I would allow him to extend, which I don't know why he would think that I wouldn't let him extend. There was no reason not to. So it was very, very odd, right? And I kept thinking to myself, because again, you take tire tread photos before and after every rental. I was looking at the photos. I was like, these tires are not bald. And number 2, it's not even raining here. We barely had a light dusting of water, precipitation. We didn't even get real rain here in California. And so I don't know what was up with this guy. But anyways, he dropped the car off. Everything was fine. I triple checked the tires. The tires have like at least 60% life on them at least. And I know that tires aren't measured in percentages, but just to give people an idea. And so I don't know what was the deal with this guy, but I don't think I'll have him rent from me again, because it's just when people make comments like that, I don't understand it and it bothers me and it makes me feel like, there's some ulterior motive to that. I really don't know what's the deal with that. And if you look at the tires, I don't have the car in the garage right now, but I'll try to show you guys tomorrow. I mean, there's no one in their right mind that would think that those tires were bald. It's not even, you have your wear bars. You can't even really see the wear bars showing yet. So I don't know what was the deal with this guy, but anywho, it was all said and done. So that was the weekend or the last few days that I've had. So these things do happen. And again, I was saying that, and I've experienced things happening in multiples like this many, many times before. It happens all the time. And it's fine, if you're equipped with it, like you have your tools, like I have my AAA, I have my jumper cables, I have my service provider, so I can move very quickly through these types of situations. And again, I have many cars, so it's not unusual to have multiple situations happening at a given time when you have as many cars as I do. Now, of course, if you have 1 or 2 cars, it's unlikely that you'll experience as many things as I experience in a given amount of time, in a compressed amount of time. But if you have all of your tools and kind of all your ducks in a row, like I said, you can move very quickly through them, and it's really not as big of a headache as it could be. And you just kind of deal with things methodically and with the best judgment that you can, and deal with them, take it from where it is and just kind of move with it, right? Rather than stressing out about it. But that kind of takes me to my final point, which is if you are getting into Turo, right, and you're thinking about buying cars, this is why I am such a proponent of buying newer cars that don't have high mileage on them, is because you do have weird maintenance issues that come up all the time. And this is coming from somebody who buys brand new cars, that I still experience so many different things that happen. And thank goodness, I would say 99% of the stuff that I encounter is covered through warranty. So I don't have that variable cost of coming out of pocket. And it really, when I have weekends like this, I often wonder, people who do buy used cars that have far higher mileage, how do you guys handle the constant maintenance issues that can come up with these cars? Or maybe I'm just really peculiar about the way that I maintain these cars because I like them to be running well. So I'm really hyper focused on the wheels and maintenance, oil changes and things like that. So I don't know. I guess everyone does it different, but that I'm really a strong believer that is why Enterprise and Hertz, why they have newer cars, and their strategy is to have new cars and then trade out of them after X amount of miles, which is exactly my strategy, because I just really can't grasp how you can account for the variables of maintenance. And especially if you want to have multiple cars, that would just get insanely hard. So that's just a little bit about what I've experienced. So if I had any advice, my top tips would be AAA, always a great idea to have, even just for yourself, maybe not even necessarily for Turo, but I've used it quite a few times for Turo, and just makes life so much easier sometimes. Next thing would be to really have your service providers really lined up well. For example, the shop that I buy tires from, they have 2 locations. And between their 2 locations, which are probably a couple miles apart, I've always been able to find the tire size that I need, even if it's last minute. Today was a prime example. For my C300, I needed a 235/35/19. Those are really hard to find. Even if you go to an actual brand name tire shop, they often have to order those, and they don't carry those in shop. So there are certain tire sizes that are harder to find than others, but I've always been able to find my tires with the shop that I work with. So you really want to find somebody good. That way, when you're in a pinch, they really come through for you and you can rely on them. So get your service providers lined up. I would recommend having definitely a tire shop, a wheel person, and then maybe like a PDR person that you work with, and then of course an overall body shop as well. So those are probably the 4 things that I would say, if you are in Turo or you're growing or you're getting into it, those are the relationships that you want to build, because you really need to have those connections to move quickly and to maximize the number of days that your car is on the market. Because again, you don't want to be unlisted and then you can't get everything done in a timely manner, and before you know it, 2 weeks have gone by, and that's 2 weeks without revenue. So that's my tip for the day. That's what my weekend looked like, and why I've been so busy, and why I'm posting this video so late in the day on a Monday. But yes, guys, hopefully let me know how the audio sounds on this. I am testing my audio for the podcast, so hopefully it sounds pretty decent. And I will let you guys know once that podcast comes out. And I have so much stuff that I want to go over with you guys, but this video is entirely too long, so I'm going to cut it right here. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Once again, my name is Saimah. This is Saimah's Experience. I missed you guys over the weekend, but I am back and in action. If you like this channel, be sure to subscribe, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.